So I wanted to share this thing that I think composers do. I do it. I listen to a score from a game or a movie or whatever, and I think I could write that. Or I think I'd like to figure out how to write that. And I think that there's nothing wrong with that. I think everybody does it to some extent because we're sort of figuring out, like where our skill set stands in relation to stuff we like. So, and I think that's a very natural thing to do. So, but I think what we miss when we think that way is to assume that the composer was hired to write that thing, they wrote it, and then that was the end of the project, which of course we know is not true. But I'm here today to share what I think our secret real job is as composers, and that is we are consultants. We are brought into a project to answer one question, and that question is, what does this thing sound like? And in order to do that, we have to find a lot of things that it doesn't sound like, which is why initially in the first phase of the process, which I think is also the most challenging, there's a tendency to want to nail things on the first try, but we can't nail anything on the first try because unless the project for which we're composing has a pre-existing musical design language and framework to even assess whether we've nailed anything on the first try, we can't, because it is our job to define that framework. Once that framework is defined, then we can move on to creating content that meets that framework. So the job of being a composer is very much kind of a two-phase job where you start kind of more as a consultant and a problem solver, and then you move into more of a compositional role. What's really interesting though about this process is at some point, in order to create variety, you inevitably break some of the rules in the design language that you originally cultivated. And I think probably that's a better topic for a later video. So consulting and helping figure out what a game, a movie, a product sounds like by exploring all sorts of things that it doesn't sound like along the way, I think gets us to the best result possible. All that stuff that ends up on the cutting room floor along the way, all the stuff that doesn't end up on the soundtrack that you hear in the game or on Spotify or wherever, that's just as important, if not more important, than the final product. So that's something I think worth thinking about. Our secret real job as consultants, as problem solvers, and of course, all the skills that are required to compose something that ends up in the final product are important. But I think in some ways the final product that you end up hearing is somewhat of a byproduct of the true skill set, which is to communicate and consult and problem solve and collaborate, which is really what being a composer as opposed to being a touring artist or a band is more about. So along those lines, I'm starting a course, which is going to be a live course. It's going to be remote, but synchronous in that it's going to simulate somewhat of a classroom environment where we can all communicate about this very thing, about how to interpret and respond and implement feedback as a composer. The course is called Compose Yourself, which I know is super on the nose, but the idea is in the face of getting feedback and direction that may not make sense at first, that may sort of seem harsh, how to stay kind of composed and collected and implement that. Because like I said, and I'll say again, is really the true job of being a composer. So I will put a link to my class and the first course that I'm offering, which is called The Pitch, in the comments. But thanks for watching, and I'll be back with another one of these soon.